What up, cucks? It's your boy, the Hater. And before I start this video, which I was really excited to make, I want to take a moment to remind everyone to please subscribe, like, and comment so your boy can grow. We are growing at an unprecedented pace. And when I say we, I really do mean we, right? This is a grassroots project. No friends and family like the Hater. Everything I've done is on my own merits and because of you guys. So please help me out some more so we can subscribe, like, comment, grow, and then as a result of that, we can get our message further along. I would really appreciate it. It takes 1 second. So just do it so the algorithm can stop ramming your boy and instead start helping your boy. Now let's make this message a little bit more intrusive before we take it off completely and start with this video. So as the name shows over there, we're going to talk about the top 10 women wrestlers ever. Now, maybe some of you are going to be able to decipher who the number one is, but I think a lot of these things are going to surprise you. Starting with number 10, Ariel. That's right, cuts. Ariel from ECW. Now, the reason why I chose Ariel to be number 10, if I'm being honest, I could only come up with 9, right? I could only come up with 9 women that I actually like. And I thought about leaving number 10 as nobody, but I decided against that. I figured it'd be better for the community, for the family, to get a full number 10. And I thought about it long and hard. And Ariel's presentation, her look, right, and her contribution to helping that jobber, Kevin Thorne, try to get over should not be understated. It was a tie between Ariel and Ivelisse Velez. That's how far we had to dig to get here. But Ariel, I always liked her. She was interesting and she was fun to watch. So that being said, let's move on to number 9. Any guesses? Let's go to number 9. Charlotte Flair. That's right. I'm sure most of you were expecting Charlotte Flair to be number 1 or number 2. And I'm sure all of you are surprised that Charlotte Flair is number 9, right? But the Hater says it like he sees it, right? Charlotte Flair is a great wrestler, but that's all she is. As you're going to see, virtually everyone, in my opinion, everyone above Charlotte has contributed more to wrestling and specifically to women's wrestling. And that's fundamentally what I'm taking into account here, right? A lot of the stuff can be subjective. Someone might think Bianca Belair is better than Charlotte or whatever the case may be. But the facts are what the facts are, right? You have to be able to, number one, be a good wrestler. But more importantly than that even, not even equally importantly, more importantly, you have to be able, in my opinion, to have something on your resume that goes beyond the fact that you wrestled. Charlotte's cool and everything, but what is it that she brings to the table? She's just another wrestler. She's basically a female John Cena. And just like I wouldn't have John Cena as number 1 probably, Charlotte cannot be number 1. Let's move on to number 8 up in this bitch. Becky Lynch. First of all, look at the picture that I chose. She actually looks good here. This was during her steampunk little like pseudo gimmick, which I actually thought was kind of clever. Becky Lynch is on this list for the exact reasons that I just explained when we were talking about Charlotte, right? Whereas I think Charlotte is much better in the ring than Becky Lynch, the facts are what the facts are. And the Hater is a facts-based channel, motherfucks. Don't forget that. The fact is that Becky Lynch main evented WrestleMania. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, well, Hater, Charlotte also main evented WrestleMania, as did Ronda Rousey. Yes, that is true. However, I think we all know that that year, the reason why this match was put on as the main event is largely due to Becky Lynch. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's only that. That's why she's at number 8, right? A lot of stars had to align, and a lot of this was due to luck. If it was in a different year, it could have been Bianca Belair, but it wasn't. It was Becky Lynch. And at the end of the day, she won the first ever women's main event at WrestleMania. And as far as I'm concerned, the only main event that involves women at WrestleMania, because as everybody knows, and as I keep saying, night 1, the main event of night 1 at WrestleMania does not count. Cuts. That being said, let's move on to number 7 up in this piece. Mae Young. I don't think anybody can doubt this. Now, the hater's not going to sit here and pretend that he was watching wrestling in the 50s and 60s and 70s, whenever the hell Mae Young wrestled. To be honest, I don't even know when she wrestled, right? But what I do know is when she came back during the Attitude Era, she was instrumental in doing a lot of very important things. Number one, putting over the Dudleys when Bubba Ray super bombed her through a table, right? Two, she was entertaining and charismatic, right? She was obviously a comedy character. But number three, and obviously the most important element behind this, is look at Mae Young. Mae Young was like in her 80s when she was doing this, right? Which is fucking awesome. As a result of that, Mae Young was part of a lot of memorable moments, and very few people, let alone women wrestlers, are on TV at this age. And even fewer, right? You can count them in one hand probably, are on TV at this age doing this kind of comedy as well as this kind of physical sportsmanship, if you will, right? Obviously, she wasn't going to go out there and have a 10-star match against Tori, but for what she was, Mae Young will always hold a special spot in my heart. One of the greatest moments of the Attitude Era, in my opinion, was there's a part where Mae Young comes out and you see like, I don't know what, eight college-aged young men, like not the kind of fans that you have today, not neckbeards, but 8 college-aged young men with their shirts off, having the words, the name Mae Young on their chest, one letter per person. It was amazing, and it really showed how much Mae Young was appreciated. Rest in peace, Mae Young. Now moving on to number 6 up in this mug. Number 6, Trish Stratus. I purposefully picked a picture of modern-day Trish Stratus to really highlight how great she still looks. Obviously, nobody can deny that she looks better than literally every single women's wrestler right now. Right nowadays, they have these, I'm not going to say ugly women's wrestlers because no reasonable person would say that Bianca Belair is ugly. That's just absurd. You just be lying. But she ain't no Trish Stratus, motherfucks. And neither is Charlotte, neither is Becky Lynch, neither is Liv Morgan, neither is Mandy Rose, neither is anybody. Trish Stratus is obviously one of the most attractive women in wrestling history. But it's not just that I'm putting up here. Trish Stratus was hired specifically because she was a very attractive woman. But she did not rest on those laurels, right? She essentially learned how to wrestle when she didn't need to. And then she got over and became like one of the best wrestlers of all time. So with that being said, Trish, everybody knew she was going to be somewhere in this list. Maybe some people expected her to be at number 1. I don't blame them, but not for the hater. She is not the hater's number 1. As a matter of fact, we're going to go through some different wrestlers that you people haven't even heard of for years, probably. Don't worry, it's not going to be like Minami Toyota from All Japan. No. I don't even know who that is. So we're going to get to the real nitty-gritty here. But Trish Stratus, in my opinion, she is like almost like a Shane McMahon, right? In the sense that she doesn't need to do what she did, but she did it anyways. And then, to make matters even more interesting, she came back and did it again and might come back and do it again. So Trish Stratus, one of the GOATs, no doubt about it. Speaking of Trish Stratus, let's get to number 5. Lita. Once again, I picked a picture. This is an older picture because Lita, unlike Trish, she still looks great too, but she didn't age quite as well because look at Lita. She was obviously insanely attractive back in the day. Now, Lita, everybody knows that people's lives have changed because of Lita. We're talking about your AJ Lees. We're talking about, your Sasha Bankses, all these people that emulate Lita, right? Lita was the first girl, and this is why she's higher than Trish. She was the first woman that I've ever seen wrestle and that many, many people ever saw wrestle that actually could do cool things, right? Number 1. Number 2, right? Even though she's insanely attractive, that was not the draw of Lita. The draw of Lita was she might do a Hurricane Rana off the top rope or a moonsault. You know what I mean? She might be in some incredible storyline, right, where Dean Malenko's trying to date her and she's trying to challenge him for the lightweight title, right? Or light heavyweight title. What do they call it? Yeah, the light heavyweight title, I guess, right? Or was it the lightweight title? I don't even remember. Cruiserweight. It should be light heavyweight because like we have the cruiserweight, so it makes more sense. But I don't remember. I think it was light heavyweight title. But the point is, she was in that. She was in that great segment where Stone Cold and Triple H beat the hell out of her with chairs. She was like part of the Edge push, right? She obviously like cheated on Matt Hardy too. That's not good, but whatever. It is what it is. We're judging her as a wrestler, and she was an amazing wrestler. I believe that Lita got a lot of women to really believe that they could be wrestlers and not necessarily just be out there to be hot. And this is, again, despite the fact that Lita is obviously very attractive. Let's move on to number 4, cuckolds, Awesome Kong. All right, let's get this one out of the way. A personal favorite of the haters, Awesome Kong. Now, a lot of wrestlers nowadays, like, for example, they keep talking about how Bianca Belair is like the first black woman to be drafted on SmackDown and all these other things. They bring up race for no reason. I mean, not for no reason. They bring up race because America has a long history of racism, and so does WWE. But I'm not a racist myself, so I'm not picking Awesome Kong to be number 4 for any reasons having to do with race. But I would acknowledge, right, that by virtue of the fact that she's black, I think she should be held in high regard when other wrestlers that are mid, like Bianca Belair, are held in high esteem because they're black, right? Awesome Kong, in my personal opinion, is number 2 all time in terms of in-ring ability, right? Number 1's coming up later. But Awesome Kong is number 2 all time. It's not even close. You know what I mean? Awesome Kong could very believably wrestle. When she did the implant buster, but for me, the Awesome Bomb was even better, right? The Awesome Kong Power Bomb, best power bomb I've ever seen, in my opinion. Now, there are some exceptions, like now, like, you know, Keith Lee does like the Spirit Bomb. That's a pretty good looking power bomb, if we're being honest. You know, like, let's see who else has a good power bomb. Kota Ibushi does a good power bomb. But up until that point, like, it's like if you compare her power bomb to Batista's, it's not even close. Hers is like 100 times better, right? If you compare her power bomb to like Walter's power bomb, it's not even close. She was believable, right, as a monster, and she could actually do super cool moves. Number 1 and number 2. Number 3, Jim Cornette put her in that, like, you know, like wild card tournament where she like teamed up with Road Dogg or something, like, and you had all these different teams that had never teamed together, right? She was the only woman to go there, and, you know, there's a reason for that. She never got her chance in WWE, even though she joined as Karma. She never got a chance because she got pregnant in real life, and unfortunately, she miscarried the baby. But Awesome Kong, I don't want to hear people like, oh, Sean O'Hare is the biggest missed opportunity. Awesome Kong is the biggest missed opportunity in the history of wrestling. Awesome Kong should have been a legend, right? And the fact that she isn't is a crime in and of itself. Now let's get to the top 3, motherfuckers. Top 3. China. Now, some of you probably were thinking that, well, if Trish and Lita aren't going to be number 1, then it must be China, right? Wrong. China is number 3. China's contributions can be seen on this picture with an Intercontinental title. She's the first woman and only woman to hold the Intercontinental Championship, and she held it more than once. China was presented as a believable wrestler that could theoretically beat up men, and not the men of today, because if you had China against Carmelo Hayes or China against Finn Balor, you'd be like, oh, obviously China's going to destroy these two like jobbers, right? They put her in there with like fucking Hardcore Holly, who would destroy Carmelo Hayes and Finn Balor in a 2-on-1 fight, right? So China was made to be believable. She even had a few shots at the world title, in addition to obviously her great reign as women's champion. But in my personal opinion, the best part of China's career was Mamacita. That was just great. So great, in fact, that they've pretty much copied and pasted this with Dominic Mysterio and Rhea Ripley, and they're not even hiding it. They gave Dominic Mysterio an Eddie Guerrero haircut, and they started calling Rhea Ripley Mommy instead of Mamacita. It's like the same exact thing, except obviously not as well done, because China is better than Rhea Ripley, and Eddie Guerrero is obviously better than Dominic. So that being said, China cannot be number 1 because, in my opinion, although her contributions have been significant, her contributions are not long-lasting, right? There was not an influx of women that then became Intercontinental champions or that would wrestle with men. So China is an outlier, and for that, she deserves a very respectable number 3. Now, before we get to number 2 and number 1, there's a few honorable mentions that I wanted to mention. So these are almost like a spoiler. These are not going to be number 2, and they're not going to be number 1. It's Mickie James, a personal favorite of the haters, but the fact that she botches a lot takes her out of this top 10, in my opinion, and also the fact that she was just another wrestler, right? Like, I like Mickie James. I like her more than I like, let's say, Michelle McCool, who also deserves an honorable mention, but they're nothing like crazy special, right? They didn't break any boundaries. They didn't do anything insane. She's one. Michelle McCool is also one. And Tori, not Tori Wilson, but the original Tori, who I think did a lot of things. And the last honorable mention, Sable and the Bella Twins, right? They're all great, but none of them have anything on number 2 and number 1. So I think number 2 is going to surprise a lot of you. It was so close. I almost switched number 2 and number 1. So that's why I want to take a break after number 3 and do the honorable mentions. Coming in at number 2, none other than Daphne, motherfucks. Daphne. That's right. Zombie hot Daphne. Now, for those that don't know, Daphne unfortunately killed herself a few years ago after she gained a lot of weight and was dealing with depression. I don't know if the weight had anything to do with it. I don't know why I brought that up, but that's the image that I have. It was very sad. She was just like, she had ballooned up. Not a big deal, honestly, but like she did like a Facebook live stream where she said that she's, not doing very well and she killed herself. Obviously, the hater takes these kind of things very seriously. And if you need help, contact somebody, even talk to the hater, because I'll help out, motherfuckers. I'll do what I can. And that is the reason why I bring all this up, is because this is not why I picked Daphne at number 2. I think a lot of people that might see this video might think, oh, he only put her at number 2 because she killed herself. Absolutely not. I've always been a massive Daphne mark. Number 1, her work in WCW is amazing, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Her work in TNA is also amazing. First of all, she always looked great, and a lot of people would say, like, well, she would have had a better career if she looked like Trish Stratus. In my opinion, she is as attractive as Trish Stratus and Lita. Daphne is a very attractive woman. She's obviously different. She's going for that goth thing. She was always a very attractive woman. Now, beyond the fact that she did great work as the governor in TNA, those that know, and the hardcore matches that she did, while she was not excellent in the ring by any stretch of the imagination, the hater is honest about these things, it's her WCW run that, in my opinion, solidifies her as number 2 and almost number 1. Daphne, as far as I can tell, Daphne is the first woman that I can remember ever to get over in wrestling without reference to her being a sexualized object, right? Daphne is the first, and in my opinion, only woman to ever get over without going for this sexiness, right? Everyone else kind of still goes for it, right? Becky Lynch, Rhea Ripley is like pulling up her leotard to show her ass. Like, a lot of the women are still doing this, even post Women's Revolution. Daphne was so far ahead of her time, motherfucks, that she didn't need to do any of this. Daphne was able to get over on her own, on her merits, and on her charisma, which in my opinion is unparalleled in women's wrestling. I don't think anyone comes close. Daphne was a natural character, and rest in peace, you are missed. And coming in at number 1, I don't think it could go to anyone other than Gail Kim, cucks. Gail Kim. Before the Women's Revolution ever became a thing, Gail Kim started the Women's Revolution before the Knockouts division even was a thought, right? Gail Kim was the only woman in TNA to be a permanent fixture from the beginning, and then many different times and through many different iterations. But Gail Kim was the first and most important TNA knockout before they even had the knockouts. Before all this, Gail Kim was out there doing diving Hurricane Ranas to AJ Styles, taking Jeff Jarrett guitar shots to the head, taking super kicks to the face, doing this basically on her own, right? Without even the intention of having a women's revolution. It is a crime that Gail Kim was not in WWE when the manufactured give women's a chance, women's revolution happened, right? Gail Kim is the ultimate pioneer for women's wrestling. If there is no Gail Kim, nobody ever takes women's wrestling seriously. One of probably my favorite women's match was a match. I think it involved a cage, but I don't know if it was a cage match. It was Gail Kim versus Awesome Kong, right? This was the moment when I watched and I was like, wow, this is a great match. And next month, they're going to do another match, another Gail Kim, Awesome Kong match. And I bought the pay-per-view and I actually looked forward to it. The pay-per-view was pretty good. I don't remember much of the details. I only remember the Gail Kim match. But I remember that before I decided to ask my mother to buy it for me because I was a teenager, right? Before I asked her, I was like, should I spend my one ask for the next God knows how many months of a pay-per-view? Because my mom never wanted me to watch wrestling cuts. Should I spend this on this pay-per-view? And the thing that tipped me over was the Gail Kim Awesome Kong match, and primarily because of Gail Kim, right? And this is the only time in the history of the hater watching wrestling, which dates back to 1998, and for a long time it was religious. Like I didn't miss a Raw for years. You know, this was the only time in the history of wrestling that I looked forward to a women's match. And this happened multiple other times during the development of the women's division in TNA. There's a few other ones that were there. Angelina Love, Madison Rain even, Velvet Sky, that kind of pushed that division. But nobody was as important and as pivotal in making women's wrestling what it is today without Gail Kim. In short and in summation, if there were no Gail Kim, nobody would give a flying fuck about the four horsewomen, which are all significantly below Gail Kim. Nobody would give a rat's ass about Ronda Rousey. None of these things would happen if it weren't for the fact that Gail Kim did what no other woman could do. And that is make wrestling fans take women's wrestling seriously. This, in my opinion, the moment when Gail Kim was starting to get over and she became the first Knockouts champion, this was the height of wrestling. For TNA, that is. Obviously, the real height is the Attitude Era. But this was so close to the Attitude Era that it's almost like a second climax, right? After that, then we entered the ROH era where people started pretending that Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are good wrestlers. But when Gail Kim became the women's champion, this was the second highest point in the history of wrestling for me. Not just because of Gail Kim. Everything just kind of had fallen into place. But for the first time in the history of wrestling, at least in my opinion, the women's division was actually contributing and not detracting. In the past, the women's division, and I would argue in the present, the women's division detracts more than it adds. Let's be real. Nobody gives a fuck about Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler. Nobody wants this on TV, right? And a lot of fans, I think, when they tune in, they're like, oh, shit, it's Zoe Stark again. Damn, I don't want to watch this. Maybe some of them feel sexist inside because they're too weak to stand up for themselves, even to themselves, and they watch it anyways. I, on the other hand, flip the channel, but I never flip the channel on Gail Kim. Even in her bullshit WWE run where she became women's champion, like in her first match, I didn't flip the table. I think she had 2 runs. Yeah, she had 2 WWE runs. I think she became champion in one of them. Gail Kim, unbelievable. Gail Kim is awesome, and I don't think anybody holds a candle to her. And with that being said, motherfucks, this has been a list of the top 10 women's wrestlers of all time. Please comment and tell me who you think is the best. It is possible that I may have missed some crazy good wrestlers, right? Because I came up with this list very, very quickly. Then I went and found the pictures and did the presentation that you're seeing here. So I didn't really think it through. But I knew my top 3, like, off the bat, right? Like Ariel, okay, you could swap her in for, like, Mickie James. You could swap her in for Miss Jackie, right? But at the end of the day, I think Ariel did more in terms of, like, her presentation than most. So she deserves a spot only for being the most interesting diva of that era, in my opinion. And with that being said, motherfucks, take care of yourselves and fuck your mothers.